In early April 1776, the Pennsylvania Evening Post published a letter that informed readers that the fortress of Quebec City had capitulated to American commander Benedict Arnold, a surrender that never occurred. On Saturday, April 6, 1776, the Post printed the letter, said to have been sent from Paris, which was dated January 4th, and which reported that the citadel of Quebec had fallen to provincial American troops around that time. By the close of 1775, Quebec was the last major fortified position that the British Army still held in Canada, and American troops in the region had swelled as the armies of Colonel Benedict Arnold and General Richard Montgomery met before the city toward the close of that year. An attack on the city had indeed occurred around the time that the account had allegedly been sent in early January, but not the one the letter in the Post described. According to the letter, General Carleton had sent a ship express from Quebec with decisive news of the surrender of the city. The letter alleged that the ship carrying this express, being very leaky and in distress of weather, was forced to put into Nantes, and by this the court of France had had an earlier intelligence of the news than the court of Great Britain. The letter surmised that 1,600 British troops had been taken prisoner, while the number of American troops in the freshly conquered city was expected to balloon to 240,000 before the spring. The forces of Montgomery and Arnold had indeed attacked the city around this time, launching a pre-dawn assault in the morning of New Year's Eve. Contrary to the report in the Pennsylvania Evening Post, however, the offensive had ended in failure. About 80 American soldiers were killed or wounded, among them General Montgomery, who died in one of the first volleys of the attack, and more than 400 were taken prisoner. By late January, news of the defeat and of Montgomery's death had circulated throughout the American states, making the timing of this fake news particularly interesting. The April 6 letter continued, "The reduction of Quebec, we hear, was effected by the following maneuver of Colonel Arnold. He divided his men into 5 parties and prepared to make an assault on the town in 5 different places." The letter's anonymous author continued that the garrison, perceiving this and not able to discern in which part of the main force was planted, were at a loss where to place their artillery, and were by that means put into such confusion that they surrendered immediately. The assault as described here is remarkably similar to the 4-pronged attack on the upper and lower town that Montgomery had devised, but unlike the report in the Post, the defenders seemingly identified the main American force under Montgomery and Arnold. Montgomery and his men were largely shot down at the Palisade in the lower town. Arnold's men, commanded by Daniel Morgan after Arnold took a musket ball to his leg, made it into the town, but when the barricade they overran to gain entry was retaken by the British Army, Morgan and his men became trapped in the city and were forced to surrender. Arnold, who had been taken to the rear of the assault upon his injury, was not captured alongside Morgan and his men, and refusing to retreat, continued to lay ineffectual siege to the city for 2 months. As the letter mentioned Arnold as the commander that took the city, rather than Montgomery, if this letter was an American fake, it's possible it was meant to convince readers that, following the first disastrous attack, Arnold had regrouped and ultimately taken the city. The supposed timing of the attack would have fit roughly in with other American accounts reporting on the continued investment of the city. If the letter was a French fake, coming as it supposedly had from France, it's possible that the letter's anonymous writer was unaware of the failed attack on Quebec, and had written the fake account in an attempt to buoy American enthusiasm for the revolution, as continued rebellion in the American colonies served to France's advantage. Whatever the case, the fake letter in the Pennsylvania Evening Post seemingly got very little traction in the American press. News of the defeat of Montgomery's army had spread like wildfire, with accounts being printed and reprinted numerous times across the country. The report in the Post, however, doesn't seem to have been reprinted once. It seems that, by April of 1776, Americans were aware that the siege of Quebec had little chance of succeeding. In early April, Arnold was replaced as the commander of the American troops in Fort Quebec by General Daniel Wooster, and while news of his departure likely hadn't yet reached the American states by the time the Post published the letter on the 6th, few Americans seemed ready to believe that Arnold, with his remnant army, had actually taken Quebec. Despite the fact that the fake news in the January 4 letter from Paris doesn't seem to have spread very widely or convinced very many people, its existence still shows that even in 1776, it wasn't always a good idea to believe everything